we spent an hour talking about transforming organization. We talk about the books transform, but most of the time we still have people say, okay, but concretely, how do you do it in details? Okay, is there any concrete example? Are we talking not about talking about the Amazon of this world, but concretely those companies surrounding us? How did they transform? How did they apply that product operating model? We thought would be interesting and important to also share with you some Belgium success stories and how we are actually transforming those organizations and helping them embracing a different way of approaching product management. And without further introduction, because I think you'll do a better job at introducing yourself, right? Um, I'll let the stage to Koen and Arne, who will present you the how we approach that at Intigriti. I'll just do a small technical. Okay, perfect. We all set.
All set.
So, floor is yours.
Thanks, Timothée. Welcome, everyone. Welcome at Intigriti and in the offices. Great to have you here, even on a soccer sunny evening. So appreciate the effort. We'll make it worth your while. First and foremost, little disclaimer, we'll take you through the challenge and the journey that we at Intigriti did. We're in the journey for 1.5 years now, so I was relieved that also Marty said it was a multi-year challenge. It is. But we'll give you a glimpse of what it looks like in our case after 1.5 years, and then we'll try to be honest and open, give you all the pitfalls and the roadblockers and the fails and the certainly do's. Before we dive in, this is not a Koen story, this is not an Adam story, this is a full organization story. One of the most important things that I want to stress on, we've got some people in here, some brand new people in here. So we've got Lisa over there, who's part of this journey. We've got Greg, who's going to be part of this journey. Congratulating, he's our new head of product coming in. We've got Arne, we've got myself, and then we've got the rest of the organization. So let's dive in. Intigriti. What Intigriti does, for those who don't know, is it was a startup. We'd love to consider ourselves still a startup. We're actually grown a bit bigger now. And we're fostering for cybersecurity on a global scale for all web applications, SaaS, but also hardware companies out there. So what we do is we leverage a community of researchers, guide them towards assets that can be security tested. And at that point, if they find something, handle that with ethics and earn a buck by reporting the vulnerability and helping the organization solve it. If you look at where we are at this point, we're in our 7th year of existence. Where I started as COO of the company, because I failed to introduce myself, I'm COO of the company now. Entered the company when there were 7 of us. Obviously, there was no CEO at that point. I came from the product side of the organization and now grew larger. Currently, we've got 113K plus researchers in our community, which is quite a decent number. Over the lifespan, we've got about 100K submissions, vulnerabilities going from low to critical vulnerabilities out there that were solved by customers or even reported to customers, right? Startup, no longer 7. There's 103 of us now serving 32 countries, which is quite a different mindset in its own. Major part of the growth happened between 3 years ago and now. So it's quite hyperbolic, right? 15 million has passed through our systems, 50 million euros in payouts to researchers, which is a nice number. And at any given time, we've got about 400 active projects. That's the scale of things at this point. If you see at what we're offering, it comes in threefold. So basically, we've got on the one hand, we've got security testing and we've got continuous testing, meaning we have a program, researchers can go to that program, find the assets, hack on it, submit vulnerabilities. Next to that, over the course of time, you see here, that was the bread and butter in the beginning days. Over the period of time, as from 2021-22, similar with our Series A, we introduced time box testing. It's a hybrid alternative, if you will, for pen testing and pen testing as a service, where we really try to plan for the crowd activity and put that in a time box in a window, say, okay, this is the asset to be tested, this is what's to be tested, and let's go. And then the third part of the service is reward services, which really surfaced in the last year. We had it longer, but it really surfaced in the last year, which is purely payment services, leverage to large company accounts, meaning those are the Microsofts of the world that are basically using that. And that's a completely separate one. We handle identity, we handle AML, we handle sanctions lists, as we do for the payments on the other platforms or on the other products, but as a dedicated API service. How did we get here? And this is part of the introduction. We didn't start as a product company at all. We started as 7 people doing stuff. I have a background in banking, which tells you a lot. And we weren't really product minded at that point. I wasn't really product minded at that point. What we did was, okay, initial offering, 2016, main focus. We've got 4 people doing cool stuff. We want to have a product, we want to sell it. And I think the first product we built was in 2 weeks. It came to market. We had the first customer. We were happy. Fine. What was the main goal there is prove that it works, prove that we have a product market fit. So we did everything we could to basically prove that our product was appealing to customers and that we could land deals, right? We managed to do that, and in 2 weeks' time, we had a product, but obviously this wasn't really a robust product. It did its thing for a set of customers, but at that point, we basically wanted to get funding and wanted to grow further. We needed to grow our market, and still 2020-ish, we managed to secure funding. We had to rebuild our product prior to funding, which is typical in the startup world. We managed to rebuild the product prior to funding, and at that point, it was still about developing the market. At that point, we were still sales-driven, kind of CEO-driven less, but majorly sales-driven, and we were customer proximity. So basically, that was our driver. We want to be the best, the closest, the best servicing provider out there. Obviously, the threat there is in, okay, we had all of a sudden 3 product lines instead of 1. We knew what bug bounty was about, but all of a sudden we want to do planned pen testing too, and we want to do reward services, which basically taught us that we had capabilities in the organization. We needed extra capabilities. There was no way that one process could suit for all the 3 product lines because they were inherently different products. So we're starting the first points of friction, and moved on to a scalability. Series B, that's where we really hit it, and we wanted to grow globally. At this point, we had grown to 80. That was Corona time. We had grown to 80, and right prior to Corona, we had our Series B, where we really wanted to make it scalable. That's where efficiency came in. That's where basically making it happen, making it repetitive, making it scalable and a robust mean. At that point, we wanted to go product-led, because basically that was the only way of having our company grow further. The customer proximity part, knowing the people, knowing the customers, only got us so far. And at that point, we really said, okay, the most asked question we had there was, what makes us different? What's our USP? Because we have three competitors out there. What makes us different? And we weren't able to answer that question. We basically had a commodity, we had a service, and we did what we needed to do. And in these phases, that was okay, because we had a role model and we built what was out there on the market. And as long as we were on par, it was good. At this point, we started to contend for services with a competitor. And that's where you need to set yourself apart. And we were not able to, because we were analyzing existing stuff, right? That's the main phase where we will be walking through and what we will be looking at. If you look further than Series C, 2025 plus, it's going to be all about that, right? Scaling, going global, remaining global, to be honest, and making sure that we are different from the rest. While we were at that, another interesting thing happened. We started our company and said, okay, we have a new market. In America, bug bounty was kind of known. In Europe, less. So at that point, we thought, okay, nobody knows it. Our main customer here is the middle enterprises or semi-middle-sized enterprise. So we're focusing on those, mainly in BE at the beginning. And this meant that we had quite low contract deals. We had a lot of personal contact with the companies. We had a lot of evangelization going on. We had a lot of education going on. And we thought that was the thing that we wanted to do. Okay, fine. Happened. We had some excursions into the more corporate side. Visma became customer, and we felt that was okay, but still we were on this segment. Corona happened, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in a room with the NSA being audited for a top American company. And it's a processor provider. And all of a sudden we were there, servicing these customers, but hey, they're interested too. They're actually willing to go there. And they thought it was pretty okay that we gave a good service, and they signed. After that one, the other came and the other came, and we basically learned that while we thought that our audience was here, the real audience and the real value was over here. We were actually tasked to change everything we knew about the product, everything we knew about the customer, to a new customer, and identify what that customer wanted, right? if you look at the split behind that, and basically what middle-sized companies were looking for, it's basically low volume. It's smaller businesses. Systems need to have less concurrency. It's lower volume data. It's lower volume processing. We managed to fit individual requirements in the roadmap, and that was okay. It was deal by deal. We landed deals, and that was what we did. And as a sales cycle, it was short, right? Everything an enterprise does is different. It's quite the opposite. It's high volumes, it's high concurrency, it's long sales cycles. But most and for all, what they are looking for is here. They are looking for their individual requirement. If you look at an enterprise, they're looking for a vision. They're looking for an individual market conform, or they basically say, okay, we expect you to do what the market does. And then some. What's the tick? What do you do different? What's the differentiator? Again, if there's one question we could not answer, it's that one. Because we were basically following the market point. We were a very good feature factory. We were very stable. We were very solid. We were good in QA. We were good in analysis. We were good in shipping things. I think we didn't miss a date. We had 3 weekly sprints. We didn't miss a date in delivery, thanks to that guy and the team. But we were no different. So we started experimenting, and one of the things is, okay, the beginning, all good. We had our cowboy time. We built it in 2 weeks. We built the second version. We thought it was 3 months. We ended up doing, okay. Basically, that's what we did. We went for an agile-based setup as from the beginning, and that's where the scaling happened. That's where we entered Series B, and we said, okay, this is the favorite word of Marty. We said, okay, you know what we need? We need a product owner. You need two teams. We were going to set a product owner that fixed, done. Fine. In the beginning, it worked as long as we had solid requirements, a solid outlook, and we thought we knew that we were building the right solution, and thought is a key word in that. This worked. Once we saw the business growing, we all of a sudden had a lot of stakeholders. We came from 20 people to 80 people to 120 people. We had a lot of stakeholders, a lot of contradictory stakeholders, and for worst, we actually buried our production organization as part of the engineering organization in the second base of the company. So basically, every contact, every input, every insight we got from customers, if any, was via sales, was via customer success, was via technical support, was via whichever. But the times that we actually interacted with customers and interviewed and did testing or did insights gathering. So we had a solution for that. Because we wanted to know what was out there, problems in prioritizing, because we didn't know the market, and then we had a lot of input. We had, at that point, 15 developers, and we had work for 60. So yeah, okay, what to choose? You can't make everybody happy. So we installed product increments, PIs, quarterly meetings, everything was well, everything was good. The product owners prepped the PI, came with a large agenda, and okay, basically it was 2 days of leveling it out and coming out with a roadmap for the next quarter, right? We did its thing. What it mainly solved for us was, okay, at least there was clarity on what we were going to do in the coming quarter. What it deliberately and specifically and explicitly did not solve for is flexibility. Not at all. It's a slow process, at least the way we did it is a slow process. There's giant peaks for everyone who is in the product team at that point to prep everything for the deadline of the PI, then get it voted, and then see the half of it not being used and the other half being used because it was the shiny new feature. And it did not bring us an inch closer to our actual value, meaning the customer. Not at all. It did help us in having a voice to the company, at least knowing what was out there. And if there was a fire or a burning platform, at least take it away. That's what it did, but no more, no less. Obviously, that was not where we wanted to be, right? And if you look at what was happening, if you take a step back, this is a slide we can now produce. At that point, we couldn't really produce that one as far. We were basically geared to solve the wrong problem. We were geared to solve the problem of, hey, we're a team. We want to build stuff. We've got 2 contenders in the market. We know what they're doing. We want to get on par. Okay, let's analyze the crap out of it, make it solid, make it function better than the competition. And hey, that's where we are. All of a sudden, that's basically known problem, known solution, small team size, small stakeholder size. All of a sudden, you grow, you build, and then you grow the business. And we crept up this way. We grew our team. We weren't 8 people anymore, we were 120. We had 7 divisions depending on what we did. And knowing the problem that we wanted to solve, not really, because everything that was on par, that was out there, we basically built, we copied. But now the what makes you different part there, no clue, huh? We don't know. And all we had at that point as capabilities was really analytical capabilities, was really stable capabilities, and not so much to say non-structural, no, most certainly not structural innovation capabilities. If we did some innovation, it was off the books in a dark corner over the weekend in the nights because we wanted to and on goodwill, but not on structure. Consequences of that, and that's basically what we discovered, and that was a trick why we discovered that we needed to change, is with you're building the wrong features. You're building the wrong stuff. If you build them, you are building one thing and you're not solving 3 other things. So you're always disgruntling 3 out of the 4 stakeholders, and then you don't have a real reason why. And alignment sessions were hella. It's not data backed, it's emotional. It's basically, we have an ARR contract of X euros. We need to land that. So basically, shove everything aside and build it. And as a consequence, strategy, long-term, can make one, but you won't ever succeed in delivering it. So what we actually needed to do is to find a way to creatively explore problems and to uplift our game, to basically look at the market instead of the individual contracts and look at the problem and embrace the problem and see what value would be there. Hence intro dualoop and product management. Dualoop, thanks to Lisa bringing me on the spot and bringing me onto the track of dualoop, and that's where we started the journey, basically.
Talking about better.
Bottoms up. We did quite a few things, and the first thing that we basically not discovered, but that needs to be stressed is it's not about installing a new process at all. The first thing that we did, and we're now a year and a half into the journey. I think we started in Jan 2023. First thing we tried and endeavored on was building a solid foundation and going for a strategy. The question there was, okay, we're a scale up. We've got companies, our customers in America, we've got companies everywhere. What's our strategy? And following that, what's the product strategy? I can tell you the way we came up with this one took us from Jan to June 2023. Ended up in us being in a room 1 week battling it out. Basically, bring the story, bring all stories, align on the story, make sure that if we go out, this is the story we stick by, and this is a story we tell and feel emotional about and that we want to. Although it's quite a large exercise, it is a very important one. Everything which you miss here, and I'm the first to say that we are not perfect at it, even after the first half of 2023, we still struggle, or we're still working on it, and we still continuously refine it. Don't believe there's a static strategy out there that could work personally, but it's a learning curve, but it is very important, because if you don't have that, personally, I believe that any product team is dead in the water. They're basically lost. You take away every autonomy you can give them by fine. So that's where we started, and that's where we also started. Okay, we're currently in the customer intimacy where we're landing deals, we're landing nice deals, we're building stuff to secure contracts, etc. Short term, where do we want to be? And where we wanted to be was in product leadership. We wanted to be the product that sold itself, where every SaaS provider wants to be the product that sold itself. But there's quite a steep difference in that, because that means that if you mirror the product and the things that you do, your portfolio, basically you measure it against the market and not against your inside-out views of customers, your inside-out views of needs, and your internal costs in processes, right? That's the first thing we did. Next to that, if we had a first version of that, and that's the stress, we basically started the transition. And the transition in our case was basically rewiring the entire organization. We spent literally 2023 rebuilding everything in our organization. That's where it came in really handy to have dualoop at the side, because basically the way we operated was dualoop handled the product team and the engineering team, and I handled the outside and the rest. Obviously not alone. So we started rewiring the organization, and at the same time, we said, okay, we're going to start the transformation. Timothée stepped in, helped us with the transformation, but at the same time, we made the decision, okay, we're going to go on full on transformation, but we're also going to hire to have someone embedded later on, because transforming is one thing, then making it work and keeping it work is another thing. Do believe that you need internal people for that. So enter Greg. Welcome, Greg. You're on the slide already, so cool. And we started, and that's one thing that, and it will come back in the lessons learned, one thing that we did, I'm going to speak for myself, that I did underestimate was a skill transition from functionalist into product manager. We kickstarted that there. We're in the trajectory for 8 months now. It's an ongoing trajectory, but the difference is big and bigger than we expected. So don't underestimate this one. And then afterwards, we went to what the expectations were, what we wanted to do, and how we would manage expectations, board, teams, sales, marketing, all around, because that's a fundamental different part. If you look at the impact of every of these items, then basically some of them have been touched, but if you look at what we did with the company or with the product strategy, the main impact there is that, okay, we were a follower in the market, basically. We wanted to become a leader in the market, which is nice to say, but hard to achieve. I think we are on a good way to start achieving that one. After 1.5 years, we see the first. We were able to tell at least the internal teams what differs us after 1.5 years. That was a personal highlight there. So yesterday we did. But so we're on the road to that one. But the main thing that was intangible and which I did not see coming was basically the essence in the teams, in the forecasting, in everything, is that not building something is valuable. We were wired as an organization to see, okay, we have a problem, we know the solution, at least we think so. We build something, we analyze something, we test something, we launch something, and we move on to the next. We don't validate it. If it's used, that's a waste of time. We go to the next one and we build. So everything in our brain, everything in our system, everything in our structure told if we build something, we're okay, we're good. All of a sudden, we started product management with some new product managers in the organization. First thing has come out is that the strategy is not so clear, not as clear as we need it to be. So we need time, we need discussion, we need alignment on that management level and on the organization. Builds up the frustration in the product management because you're exploring and get signals from everywhere, but non-aligned. So that's the first thing. And if you get those signals, then probably your first batch of initiatives that you're working on, the conclusion is, don't think we need to build this. Thanks, but no. Arna's going to go on how we coped with that in the tech team, but it's a fundamental thing that if you start with product management, that this is something to stress as hard as you can. We did not, and it's a lesson we're learning now. On the other hand, the product strategy and the company strategy is leading in what is a real game changer for us, and that means a real game changer. We got to this point, I think, a month or 2 ago, if I'm not mistaken, is the commitments, the high integrity commitments. We basically were able to do, and for me, that this is holy, meaning that at that point, if you have a commitment, if you have a roadmap, you take a commitment as a product team to what you will deliver. You'll move heaven and earth to do that. But you need to stress that you, when taking that commitment, keep some room in your teams to do innovation, to do exploration. This is going to define, okay, these are the 4 or 5 pillar points that we're building in the roadmap. That's what we commit to. All the rest can be changing. All the rest is learning. All the rest can be in the dustbin, can be reoriented. But basically, these 5 go ahead, sell, market, deblocks the entire sales organization to do stuff and to basically put your solution out there. They're tasked and they're responsible to give you an insight in what's valuable for them, but what's the minimum bar that they need to actually grow the business, and all the rest, keep it under there and keep it purely value-based. Innovation obviously makes part of it, because by saying no to things, you create ways to innovate. Priorly, we had no experimentation, no innovation. Now, this is past the presentation too in a couple of minutes ago. It's basically what we needed to do as we were buried underneath 2 layers of customer-facing functions. And we were embedded in the engineering team that was at the point where we were really feeling that we needed to change. One of the things that we felt was that we were not in control of what business was doing. We were not in control of what customers wanted. We didn't even necessarily know everything in an objective manner, in a detailed manner. And on top of that, we were linked to the engineering team. So we had a bias on stability, we had a bias on scaling, we had a bias on everything which was tech, because that was then deeper next door. What we needed to do and what we did at that point was basically detach the product management team from the engineering team, bring them up front, and we needed to build the bridges to all the other departments. We made them customer facing, which was new to us. And by doing so, we needed to convince our counterparts that basically, roadmap is, I know you've been doing it, but by the way, if product management will do it for you, just give us the input and we'll do the validation. And by the way, the first 10 initiatives we're not doing them. Obviously, that's not something you do in a week's time, and not in a month's time. It took us quite a lot more, but with the right, as Marty said, with the right insights, with the right working, with the right trust building going on, this is essential, because basically your product team needs to be in lead of the product. Otherwise, you're not product led, right? And then my personal one, to be honest, I started out the initiative and said, okay, we've got feature factory, we got analysts. Now we're going to do product management. We're not going to do functional analysts anymore. So hey, we've got 3 functional analysts that we're going to move into product management. And we actually did so, right? We coached them. We tried to convert them, to help them. And that's at that point was something that we did not, or that I did not feel is basically, if you look at the job, it's opposite in very many. If you look at a functional analyst role, then basically you've got your solution kit out for you. You know what you want to solve, and your job is to make that happen, make that functional, and make sure that it's correct. If you're a product manager, you don't even know the problem you're working with, right? You're assessing the problem, you're exploring the problem, and at that point, you will be validating and will be looking at the solutions, and there might be a solution that comes out. And the detailed grunt tech work is probably where you will be gradually giving over to the tech teams. So that is a different one. The other one is value. What do you do as a functional analyst? You analyze stuff, you make sure that it gets built, and then it goes to production, and you've got no bugs at all. You've done a great job. As a product manager, you're looking at an initiative at worst or at best, depends on how you look at it, that you don't even want to engage on it. Yeah, that's very valuable, and arguably for a company that's even more valuable than the other one. But does it really feel well if you've been doing that for 2 years? That's something we really struggled with too. That's one to take into account. And the third one is going from the well-aligned functionality is basically all of a sudden you, certainly in the beginning, product organization, those are going to be the mostly introvert people working on your solution, on your functional solution. And all of a sudden they're going to be thrown in the lion's den with all stakeholders wanting their own thing. And those are going to be the ones that basically are going to defend your product strategy. We did a great job at it. The people that we were tasking did a great job at that and are doing a great job at that. But it needs to be very clear that we're demanding a lot from these people. And these are probably the people that you need to take care of best in this initiative, because those are going to be the advocates in the rest of the organization. Those are the ones that have the steepest learning curve in the entire initiative. And it's hard. And then expectation management, basically what we needed to do, and we were used to, even on board level, to present 2 years vision. And then basically it wasn't a Gantt chart, but it came damn near close. Right? It's okay. Q1, we're going to do X. Q2, we're going to do X by 2025. We're going to be there by 2028. Never happened. It was a cool story to tell. I don't think one of those actually succeeded, right? That's the first thing we needed to tackle on expectation level. And that's where basically we worked hard and are succeeding at going to a now next later one. Yesterday, the first, and it was yesterday, leadership meeting here in that meeting room, where I said, okay, hey, sales, hey, marketing, this is what we're going to do for the next 2 years. This is now next later. By the way, this is what you already have. Now we're working on that, so we know what we're doing. The next, we think that's the solution or the problem that we're designing. And the later, cool idea, but it's a lift off the egg. We haven't been able to land this with the organization half a year ago. Now we were able to. Why? Because of the high integrity commitment. Because of, hey, this is the commitment you get. These are the 4 things that we will be selling, and everything else is a bonus. And we're going to make sure that it's the best bonus ever by focusing on the value rather than on the cool idea that someone has. Without the commitments, this is very hard to land in a board. We managed it, we tried, but it was basically a vouch of good faith that they let that slip through. Because basically, in the end, they just want to build their business, build the other department, build the ARR of it. So it's all about embracing this and finding the balance between where do we commit and where do we actively keep experimentation open. That's my part of it. Introducing Arne, he's the head of engineering and ops. And from now on, let's look at how the lessons learned are we took from you.
Yeah. So you have to imagine who comes up to me, we are going to transform the way we work. So that needs to change. And I'm going to talk about the stuff we did from an engineering standpoint to actually support the change that we want to do from feature factory towards product management. And there's a couple of things we did. First thing we did is we need to make sure that our team is set up for success to support the product managers as well. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't figure this out myself. We had the help from dualoop to make this happen. So what we did is we had 2 teams. These teams were filled with engineers and QA, and they know how to build stuff. We needed some other roles within the teams now as well to support the product managers with their discovery, challenging the discovery, and coming with hopefully solutions that can work and work together with them. And the way you do this, you install product deals. I didn't figure this out. It was also from dualoop, and I guess they figured it somewhere else. I figured out that as well from reading some book or something. I don't know. And what I try to envision here is that every team is like a mini startup on its own. So it can actually autonomously decide for itself how it wants to work, how it wants to operate, how it wants to deliver the value that has actually been figured out by the product managers in this case. And the tech lead is a very important part of this to make this happen. It manages the team, it manages the delivery, and it also gives the technical insight on, okay, is this a good idea? Or is this approach the right approach to fix or build some certain feature or not? Well, what the product manager does is clear. I think what the product designer does as well. Another important role and another very important asset you need within the organization is like an expert role. We call it software architects. You can name it whatever you want. It's a person that really understands how the technical setup of the whole platform or whole SaaS product looks like, that can deliver very valuable insights on, okay, the solution that the tech lead thinks about, can it actually work or not? So if you have multiple teams, because you want to scale this, of course, in the future as well, can it keep working in the future? And luckily, we have such a person within Intigriti. I'm very glad to have him. So as I said, we try to see these teams as mini startups within the organization itself, but you also want to make sure that there's some knowledge sharing happening within those teams, because sometimes a team does a good thing. Maybe you want to make sure that every other team knows as well. So we established chapter lead roles to understand or let them come together and tell them, okay, we did this. It's a good idea because we learned whatever out of it. One of the things that popped up out of one of the teams is from the DDD space, where they did, okay, maybe we should do event storming to figure out the process of a certain solution if it will actually work. And the cool thing about this is that you fully involve the team as well. It's not only the tech lead, it's the whole team that's there in the room together with the product manager, together with the product designer, figuring out, okay, with this certain problem, is a solution that we're going towards, we're actually really solving the problem or not. Okay. As Koen explained, we were very close together with product in the past. It was product and engineering, and now we decided to completely split product out of engineering and make sure that it actually grows and that moves up within the organization and those multiple stakeholders. So we do not have the power anymore as engineering to decide what we actually should be doing and be building, and because the close contact with, not close contact, but the direct contact with product is gone. So we cannot fully influence and control and say, okay, we are not going to build a feature because we need to make sure that this is in place so we can scale and all that. So we needed to figure out a balance on fixing technical debt while still adding value towards the platform itself as well. So how we did it in the past with the product increment is we shouted as hard as possible that we needed to do something, and we got a whole quarter for ourselves just to do whatever we want. The rest of the organization wasn't really happy when we did that. So the approach we take now is to make sure that we these small technical things that we want to fix or improve or make sure that we can scale, we chunk them up in small pieces and we take around 20% of the time of a team. So they add value of whatever the product manager figured out as good thing to do, but you also add some small technical things that we need to improve. This one ties in with what Koen said, by not doing something, it's also valuable. I think it's best I do it with an example. An example we had is BMW, the customer of Intigriti. Back then it wasn't, and they really wanted to have a ServiceNow integration directly from the platform. What we would have done in the past is ServiceNow integration. We drop everything. We make sure that we want to assign this customer. We figure out what a ServiceNow integration is. Our competitors do have it. Okay, make sure that's a better solution. We start building and we analyze and we start building, and that's the best thing to do. But with product management in place, we changed the approach. So the product manager started to do conversation with other customers that were interested in having a ServiceNow integration as well. While we from the engineering department decided, okay, what can we do to support product in this case? And we started to build a very small box showing, okay, this is how we envision on building a ServiceNow integration in this case. And during all these conversations in the POC itself, we figured out what BMW wanted was a very specific implementation against the ServiceNow against ServiceNow, and we were not serving any other customers by building it. So in the end, we decided not to build it. But as a downside, I had a team that was really interested in building this feature that were ready to go, and they are not able to build it now. So it was very valuable, but the challenge here is making sure that you set correct expectations towards your team as well, stating, okay, it's because we do a POC or we try to do something that we in the end will also build it. It's better to allow freedom when you decide how you want to build something and allow for experimentation from product, but also from the team itself, which ties into make sure that you give room to innovate. How am I going to tackle this? Product is in conversation with everyone within the organization. You have to make decisions on what you're going to build. We have very bright minds within the engineering team that's constantly in the code, constantly understand how the platform works and are thinking in a different manner. Maybe sometimes think, okay, maybe I want to just try something and see if it will add value in the future. And adding the value in the future is in the end the job of the product manager to decide. So what we did here is whatever question that popped up of an engineer asking, can I do this? Can I do that? We always just said yes and see if something nice popped up. And one of the initiatives we saw is that out of the blue, machine learning started to evolve and we want to do something with AI. And it was something from the engineering department decided, maybe it's a good idea we do something with it. And just because we said yes, someone picked it up and now we are trying to support it and we're trying to figure out with the product manager how we can embed it within the organization itself. Okay, what is the need for AI within the organization and how can we add value by using AI and machine learning on whatever features we are building. The last learning here is, and it's also linked to us splitting off products, is apparently there's multiple stakeholders within the organization and they figured that, okay, if we can't do it with product, let's go directly to engineering. Maybe my solution I have in place, I can already just bypass everything and get it delivered by engineering because they know how to build it and I know the solution already. And we need to make sure that it was embedded within the teams, that it's up to product to decide because you guys have the whole overview, the whole picture of what's happening, what are the stakeholders want, what shouldn't we do, what does the customer want, and then decide, okay, it's a good idea to do it or not do it, or say, okay, it's really the problem we're trying to solve or not. And it's not up to a certain department going to direct engineering directly. It's up to the product manager to that.
That note, yeah, the first one from a COO stance, the first thing to really stress is that it's not a process. Point. End of story. This is about a transformation where you basically rig out the entire organization and make sure that you put product in a trusted place and then that you ensure that product can have autonomy, have direction, but not over direct them, to focus on values, say no, and to be respected at saying no, but also be accountable why they are saying no and have the means at hand, data at hand, and the material to basically say to them, okay, this and that we looked at, this is not a good idea, but maybe the value. The next one is a double-sided one. The sooner you install it, the less friction you're going to have. And I was asking myself the question, okay, if we Now, went back to 2016, it was beginning. Would we have started, if we have started with a full-on product management, if I would have known, if we would have started in the product management setup, would that have been better, yes or no? I think the answer is double. I think we did benefit in the first 2 years to get on par with the competition and to just go in a full-fledged functional way and say, okay, this is the solution we want to build, them. Let's repeat the hell out of it, make sure it's stable, make sure it's solid, and let's go for there. Where we arguably went, not going to say wrong, but less optimal, where we arguably divided from the path was once we started fiddling around with product ownership and PIs and that kind of thing. That might have been a good clue to say, okay, hey guys, what we're doing, let's find another solution. And if I would do it again at that point, I would skip the PIs, I would skip the not product ownership. That was more of a team management role in our case than a product role in our case. But at that point, you have an opportunity to gradually ease in product management. So as from phase 3, at that point, I would stay away from going to PI and scale agile and all of those sexy market terms and really start easing in on the knowledge to go value-based and then converging the point where you go full-on product managing. And arguably that would have taken the stress out of the product management development that we now have in the latest year. That would have relieved the stress there. It would probably be more budget intensive, but I think the result would have been achieved in a less frictionless way. What we did feel, and it's a very strong point, and it is tangible in every conversation we have, is that basically by being forced to align on strategy, by being forced to align on value, by having clear outcomes and a clear expectation of what we are doing, what we're not doing, by giving that time, because that needs time for adoption. Basically, every conversation about what you're doing, what you want to do becomes much more normal, much easier. Where in the beginning you have very emotional and passionate debates on what you need to do, what you don't want to do, but you can't stuff it with data, and then it is just an opinion. That's where you really need to converge through your strategy, through your outcomes that you're driving, and through the data, which is provided by product in an increasing way, right? So it takes the edge of very much conversations on that one. Stressed on this one enough, high integrity commitments. This is one that I will be voicing every day for the coming 10 years, probably. And then the other one is basically, if there's 3 things to advocate, it's the high integrity commitments, it's the organization and skill building part. And the other one, the first thing you need to know if you're an organization is be okay not to deliver something if it's not worth delivering, and see that as a success rather than as a failure for your team. Because this really hinders some of the team's feeling of being valuable to the company, of being valuable to the process, and even the company. What are we doing? That kind of sums up the journey. So happy to open up the floor for any questions if there are any.
I realized one thing, maybe to double down on how integrity, because there's one thing that you must understand is that we waited for more than a year before integrating this kind of terms and concept. Because if you are doing that too soon, you may just end up just committing on building features, right? And committing on this. This is not the point. When we commit on something, it's not necessarily on the feature. It might just be on committing towards saying, in this quarter, we'll solve that problem. And the reason why we are committing towards solving that problem is because we've done enough discovery, enough research before to confirm that this problem was worth being solved. It was the most important one to solve. And then later on, once we have identified it further along, then we have identified it would be the perfect solution. Then we commit toward bringing that solution on the market. And that's where you end up with this rolling roadmap principle with the now, next, later. So you may commit on things in the now, and you may commit things in the next, and not necessarily on feature. That's really important. We commit towards solving problems, and once we know what would be the best way of solving that problem, we're okay to commit on that because we have enough confidence. Yeah. But question time. Let's go. Yeah, we will hand the mic, and I'll also try to shift there and look online to ensure that we can answer questions that come.
All right. For my question, a functional analyst, because I first want to get your definition right. That the person or the role who was mostly writing in-depth requirements and also did the testing.
Yeah, testing even not in the way we we implemented functional analysis when we knew the solution, we knew, if you will, the problem to solve. At that point, really writing the in-depth use cases in our case, making sure that everything adds up, that the the techniques of the feature are discussed, prepped, and basically writing the manual for a developer to build the feature. So everything which was analysis was very much stripped from development at that point, where we're now easing it back into the where we're actually putting it back into the course repository. Trying to be
QA team. So they really needed a whole spec to know, okay, how should this work and why should, if I press this button, why should it happen? And then separate team that really click the buttons of the development, decides, okay, great, let's go.
Okay. You already answered my second question. Who took over a lot of these responsibilities? So
exactly.
thanks. Thanks for the wonderful presentation, by the way. Really great. Thanks.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
I must have misunderstood something, or I'm confused. At one side, you said that it's a journey towards more outcome-based making. Outcome-based, it means it serves your customer's goal better. Means things like jobs to be done, thinking goes that way. At the other side, you said it's still hard to explain customer. I think I understood that. Why we are different. It's still like we are trying to beat the two others in the market or better features. That sounds confusing. It's like, but you would be better at it.
Yeah. And what we meant to say in the beginning, we were not succeeding at that. So we were not able to say why we were different. Now at this point, the point yesterday, we reached the point yesterday. We're based on the roadmap, on the now, next, later, on the outcomes that we commit to. At that point, we can say, okay, if we choose this path, this is what's going to set us aside in 1 year time, quarter's time, 2 years time, and 2 years being highly volatile, but still it's the aiming point, right? The division. Yes, all of this is basically a lead up to being able to do that. We weren't succeeding.
Yesterday was the first moment where we felt like, okay, product management is working because we are now doing something that no one else is doing, and we figured it out on our own. Really cool.
Yeah, and just to explain you the things that's happening behind. So when we started a year ago, no one was talking to customer. So it was only just beliefs. But then you can't build anything on that. And then naturally, yes, you can cheer yourself thinking and claiming that you are different, but maybe you haven't. So it took time for the product team to be ramped up. And we went from a situation where they never talked to any customer to a situation now where we're talking to multiple customers a week. And it's probably 5 to 10 calls a week with customers. And so we had to ramp up the trust, but we had also to prove that we are able to identify real customer problems, deliver on that, proving that we are there for you. And that takes time, inevitably. The big problems take time to be solved. So now we are in a situation where we have enough background, where we have the entire trust of the organization, that the product team has enough knowledge and actually has, at some extent, already more knowledge in all of the different departments on being able to set and define what would be the strategy and what would make us different tomorrow. So when we're talking about this outlook of 2 years, not talking about rollout, not talking about features, we're talking about, yes, obviously now those features that we build, but more behind that, the customer problems and the opportunities we see on the market. And that's where we are able now really to define the 2-year strategy for the product. Now I say, given all the information that we have now, given all the data that we've collected, this is the way to go. May change in the future, hence the fact we're not committing to where it was paid. This is more the direction it will take and probably the big problems we'll solve. And over the time, we'll figure it out. But we have direction, and that's a big difference. And also the moment as we were discussing earlier today is the moment where everyone's nodding in the room and saying, yeah, believe in it. That's a big, there is no fight, there is no opinion fight about this fact. They trust the fact. There's the work that has been done, and they're following that. Give me it. You
moment just yesterday,
Mhm.
you still have friction then in accepting product management, actually from others in the organization. You have friction accepting people, for example, talking so much to customers, like from the sales, and I'm pairing with what we were discussing with Marty earlier.
not really friction, no? So honestly, there is no friction. There is a real full trust of the organization what we're doing. I remember, I would say even almost 9 months ago, Because in 3 months, we went from not talking to anyone to all project manager being booked in all customer calls, like every single customer calls. And they were like, how will end that there was way too many conversation with customers. That's the reality, because that's everyone was believing it was the way to go. But it still takes time. When we talk about that aha moment, it's because even though everyone wants to believe into it, they still want to see first the result. They won't believe it into it up until you prove that you are actually making it, making the difference. And we're now making the difference because we've been able, like 6 months ago, to deliver and solving big customer problems that are now paying out, where we can track for the past 3 to 6 months the impact of what we have delivered, all of those customer problems that we have solved, that we see ramp up of adoptions on the features that we are building at that moment, which was something completely different. We went from a situation where, as Kun was saying, we were shipping something, no one was looking, and I would just say, on the how do you measure success, was just, oh, there's no bug, no one's complaining. But there were already sometimes no adoption. Now, every time we ship something, it delivers value and it is used. But that takes time. And only when you reach that moment, then you have a real buy-in. Before that, people will believe in you. They can believe in the people that try to give the trust. But there is a moment where you go from just believing to just believe the person to believe the results and buying it. And I think that's really the shift.
And if you look at the concrete example now, is that basically if you go through the journey, then the first thing to do is to arguably, and you need support from every level you are touching, which is basically the entire company. But in my opinion, you do need support from your senior management. You need to have at least one sponsor in there that is really willing to take the hit and willing to pull it forward and to vouch for it. In our case, we were pretty aligned on that, the entire management team, so that's a good thing. In the beginning, as Timothy says, you can operate on trust. You can operate on, okay, we think they know what they're doing, and we'll still ship in some things in the development team, and then we'll get our things aside, and then we'll still have a decent fair work done to get our job done. The key of that is basically into making and establishing the baseline, and then say, okay, everything which we are doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we do not know, this is what we are not engaging on, and then this is the minimum that we're doing for you now. Is this viable for you? If that's a buy-in, that's where the friction disappears. But it took us a year and a half in our, and if that friction does not disappear yet, that's where you need the buy-in for the organization. That's where you sometimes just need to say, hey guys, we're going this way. This is what we're doing. We're going to be painful. Let's mediate. Let's find a solution in between. Let's work toward the goal.
Yeah, and plus, at some point when you want to build trust, we embrace initiative where we say, we're not so convinced, but we'll do the discovery. We'll do the experiment. We build and we'll build proof of concept. But the thing that also takes time, and that also has impact, because when you have an entire organization that has been educated, I say, success for product engineering departments about shipping code, shipping feature, to a situation where Koen and Anne mentioned, where we are trying to shift that to separate solving outcomes, but also mean not building thing and being proud of saying, hey, we save time, we save money, we save energy, because we went up until a point where we say we're killing it. But that requires a lot of pride, trust, and empowerment. And that's something that you can only build over time. And even people that were believing it at some point, yeah, there were some doubts. There were sometimes low in terms of morale, but we had to remember, say, no, this is the way to go. Look at the fact, look at the reason why we are stopping doing that. It does not make sense. But still, people are falling in love with the fusion and things now. They start believing it, even though rationally it does not make sense. And that takes a lot of courage. And probably that's over the past year that also the key learning of having to doubling down, over communicating on the reason why, and celebrating those moments instead of just sometimes just contributing them to normal.
First of all, thanks for sharing the experience. I think it's extremely valuable. Touching a little bit on what you're talking right now on measuring results, if I understand well, the journey that you went through can be summarized naively into we moved from a place where we were not building the right thing to a place where we're increasing our probability of building the right thing. But that has to be measured somehow. If you would have gone in the old model, you were closing contracts, you had customers, you were growing your business. And one can argue that, well, things are working, right? We're growing as a business. You change the process on how you're making decisions, on how you choose what to build. And that is not necessarily better until it is better, right? So how are you measuring this better? And I guess maybe for the anecdotal question, where do you think you would be if you had kept the way of making all decisions, right? So basically, how are you measuring this success, and where do you think you would be if you hadn't?
To that point, a large part of the assumption is right. If not, that by doing it the old way, the measure, let me start there, the measure is still the same. We're a startup company, a scale-up company. Our goal is still to have an ARR skyrocketing through the roof as soon as we can. And that's basically the number one goal, aside from culture, aside from team, aside from, but the existence of the company is basically ARR growth, right? We were establishing that in the previous model, but it would be naive to say that we were establishing that in a sustainable way. And that's where the difference comes in, because basically we were growing the customer base, we were growing the revenue, but what we were facing with was by having an opportunistic approach to everything we wanted to do, we were only building the new customers' needs, and then basically the existing customer needs got snowed under other priorities. Increasing churn risk, increasing if you build it here, you lose it there, and then you stay status quo. And that's what we were on the risk of doing on the one hand. On the other hand, we became bigger, and we had the competing power we had against other platforms. They were there, we were winning deals, but they were all on non-scalable things. Basically, what we were different on is we had a white glove service, success in that if you want to make that global. We are better encrypted. It's a fact. Not the sexiest fact, but it is a fact. We were GDPR compliant, the only one out there because the rest was stateside. It's a fact. We're going to sell everything. Doubtful, right? So if we would have continued down that path, most probably we would have a larger chance of stagnating our income because we had winnings, but we had churn and we were not catering for the target audience. We were not catering for the enterprises. We were not able to land those big deals in a sustainable way. The way we're doing it now increases the chances of doing that, aiming for larger customers. And that's what we're currently seeing in the ARR value. And also the churn risk is decreasing severely by doing that, because basically all of a sudden you are working on robustness, you are working on those things that you're interviewing with, and more even, you're taking the churn risk into account in your prioritization. So the ARR value that would otherwise be a hidden cost all of a sudden pops up as a driver. So that's kind of the answer to our question.
Really?
To share, I think my question, touching a little bit on what you said about new growth, you focus, from what I'm understanding, a lot on customer feedback and understanding what the customer wants, and I can really see how that limits your churn. But how do you go about going off the new market and really innovating? Like going back to the age-old saying, if Henry Ford had asked what he wants, people would have said a faster horse. Like, how do you go about really innovating and not just focusing so much on current, but your customers are telling you that you don't really grow, you just limit your churn?
Yeah, and maybe to answer that, if you were just focusing on what customers want, we'll just build a feature factory. So this is probably what was happening a year ago, but that's absolutely not what's happening today. Today is about being market obsessed. It's about being customers obsessed with looking, understanding, and the need. The thing is that when you're at the size of our of Intigriti, you have enough customers to start knowing what's happening and what are the real need on the market. And don't forget, we will also have 100,000 researchers that we are engaging with, because we are on the platforms, not only about the companies, it's also about the researchers. It's about delivering value to both sides of things, ensuring that they match and encounter. And yes, there is a lot of innovative things that are happening right now, and that are the result of loads of research. And I would even say a shitload of research has happened over the past 12 months. And that's how we innovate, because we don't look at what we could build, what would be the thing. We are obsessed about solving market problems in an innovative way by not looking at the competition, but not looking at what people tell us to do, but just by focusing on the problems and then leveraging and doubling down on the creativity of those teams that are fully empowered to solve the problem. There is no conversation in this company about what we will build. We're talking about product manager, we're doing refinement with the product furious about, yeah, but what is really the problem? And will we solve that problem? How will we solve it? What's the best way? What's the smartest way of solving it? And that's really where you shift the mentality. Because it's not just about what I build, it's is this the best way of solving that?
Yeah, and thanks for the presentation. I wanted to piggyback on the questions about success measurement, but also the definition of your now, next, later roadmap. So it's twofold. We're talking a lot about outcomes because success will be defined by whether you reach those outcomes or not. Your vision is to increase ARR. That can be very generic, as you said. How do you translate that into actionable outcomes for the teams, knowing that you have several product managers, from what I understood, plus a head? And then the second question is, how far do you communicate about it to your customers? Do they expect to have a vision on where you're going?
On the first thing, the compass is obviously the strategy, right? So the ultimate goal is ARR, but by having ARR as a sole goal, you're not going to go very far. It's pretty transactional. It's not really emotional. There's no actual value in there, no difference in that. You just want more money, and that's not the story you want to tell your customers, right? The first step of making that tangible is basically by aligning on a future vision. We took a 2 years time frame because A, we're a startup scale up. Anything beyond 2 years is ancient history or it is the far future. And B, we were not at the maturity level yet to be confident that we could look very much farther than that. The second one is in scale up, you've also got your investment cycles that you need to take into account. So basically that's one of them. Making it more tangible is very much about the qualitative side of it. If you look at what we are doing, then to give an example, that making more ARR for us meant, okay, we want to deliver continuous value, where we're in a space where we have transactional value. We have a researcher finding something, delivering something, end of value chain, thanks, come again. That's the business we were in. The first thing we want to do is, hey, we want to have continuous value. Full stop. That's basically the phrasing of that pillar in the strategy. And there's several more, but taking that one, then it's really up to the product managers to look at the value chains and say, okay, if we want to make this transactional value into a continuous value chain, what do we do? What are options? What's valuable? What would the community accept? What would the customers value? What do we know and what don't we know? What do we need to? And that's where the product management really plays their role into distilling that and say, okay, if your strategy stipulates you want to have X% of your value out of recurring income rather than the transactional one, what can we do? And that's where you literally enter the product manager and the product teams coming up with problems to solve, things to achieve, and that's where you go to the now next. In the smallest steps possible, starting to try to develop something that delivers value or at least brings it further in the discovery of the data to know what will bring you value, right? So that's the chain we tend to use. Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah, I have plenty of more questions after that, but yeah, it answers the question.
Yeah. And maybe to complete, keep in mind that we haven't just invented the fact that we'll be just bringing continuous value. This is also the result of loads of analysis and research on what are the customer problems, why do they engage with them, what are the challenges that we are not yet solving that are important to them. And that's the conclusion. And then we'll say, okay, if that's the conclusion, the continuous value delivering is an essential piece for Intigriti, then how do we translate that? And what does it mean? And naturally, by doing that, obviously, that's how it's a circle. Which is because by doing those research, yes, we refine the strategy, but naturally, some problem emerged. We are able to prioritize them more and more easily up until we have solutions. And then those solutions feed the further research and so on. And that's where you really have that loop happening. And companies are.
And to touch on the second part of the question, because I omitted that one, how do we communicate it to customers? The vision in itself or the mission in itself, we're not actually communicating that because that's an internal compass. That's an instrument we use. Over the past year, it has, lived. It hasn't fundamentally changed. That's a good thing, but it does need some refinement left and right. once you get to the point where you have the vision, you have that in workable problems or workable items for the product team, and you have a view on what the capacity, what the team can, and they bring back up what the integrity commitments are. At that point, that's where you kickstart product marketing, and that's where we literally start doing product marketing. At that point, you have a feedback loop out of the teams, bolstering all the insights of customers, of internal organizations, and of capacity. You have that the groundwork, you have the baseline, and the communication to customers at that point is okay. In X and Y and Y and Z time, we're doing that, and then we're aiming for the sky because of X. So that's where you unlock the site. But between both points, in our case, there was easily a year's time to be able to formulate what that baseline was.
I have a last question for the engineer. Maybe it could be a very short answer.
No.
It may be that, but did all these process changes in the way that you were making decisions had any impact in the way that you were building products, the way that your stack was organized, the way that the team was making technical decisions at the end of the day?
You said the short answer?
No. No. So in the end, you still need to build something, and the baseline we have in place allows us to build a kind of anything. So how you come in the end discover what problems exist and what kind of solution you want to deliver, definitely there's a crucial role there, just to make sure that we are not inventing stuff that's impossible to do. And even though it sounds impossible, it might be possible, but then we need to make sure that we prioritize it correctly, because then we can maybe still do it if it's really valuable to do. But in the end, we use the agile principles within the teams itself, transferred it in these mini startups, and they just tweak the process itself. So no full function analysis anymore, just having conversations, understand what the end goal, the value is that we want to deliver, and then come up with processes themselves to figure out on how to build it. But that didn't change that much.
Yeah, and maybe the reason why it didn't change that much is because we are really strong engineers in Intigriti. So when we arrived, we're already extremely high quality standards, long tenure of the engineers. So there is really deep expertise and strong ability to onboard new engineers, ramping up, peer learning, coaching that really help things out. No, not much has changed because foundation were really robust. And that's something that must be said, because that's not the case in organization. Here, the engineering team has very strong principles, saying we're pragmatical, we're building things, but if you're building things, we know where they want to go. So we are building trade-offs, and we are ensuring that we're not generating waste while still ensuring that we have really high quality standards. And then that's a healthy foundation to then work and collaborate. We say, okay, if that's the problem to solve, these are our principles, this is the way to build it, and then move forward. And that's probably the key to success.